What's up, NASCAR Diecast fans? David Land here, and this is the NASCAR Diecast Buyer's Guide. A lot of people have asked me to review Lionel Racing, the Lionel Racing Gold Series, or the Action Racing Gold Series, whatever you want to call it. And I figured this would be kind of the best way to kind of start the series by comparing and contrasting the Lionel Racing Gold Series you can see on the left of your screen, and what I usually review, the Spin Master NASCAR Authentics on the right. I've bought each of these cars essentially so you don't have to. The goal of this video is for you to be able to make a more informed buying decision when you're buying NASCAR diecasts. This is not a us versus them thing. I know my viewers are going to be a little more favorable toward the NASCAR Authentics line. That's not the point of this. The point of this is to hopefully show NASCAR Authentics fans what is on offer from Lionel, and to show some Lionel fans what's on offer from Spin Master NASCAR Authentics. Now, I should say this, in the interest of full disclosure, in the spring of 2014, I was sent Spin Master NASCAR Authentics to review from Spin Master. I have not been sent NASCAR Authentics since spring of 2014. And none of the NASCAR Authentics in this video will have been ones that Spin Master sent me. Every single car, every single diecast you see in this review, I bought with my own money, and I bought either in the store or online in the Lionel Racing case. So that's the kind of I need to get that out of the way because some people may scream that I'm biased. But without any further ado, guys, I'm really excited for this, and hopefully you guys will all be better informed from watching this video. You're watching David Land on YouTube. So first, let's just talk about some quick stats about Lionel and Spin Master. Just a quick comparison and contrast. The MSRP, which means manufactured suggested retail price on Lionel's, is $7.99. Spin Master NASCAR Authentics are $4.99. That's the manufacturer suggested retail price. You may find them for less, you may find them for more. It just depends on the area and where you're buying them. Speaking of where you're buying them, Lionel Racing cars are essentially the only place you can really buy them are online, at specialty diecast reelers, and at NASCAR races. In stark contrast to the Spin Master NASCAR Authentics line, which you can get currently at Walmart, Target, Meijer, and Toys R Us stores. There's currently no online reliable way of getting NASCAR Authentics, and there are several ways of getting Lionel Racing diecasts online. Plan B Sales, K-State Diecast, even their own website, just to name a few. In 2014, Lionel released 49 different drivers in the 1/64 scale. That's in stark contrast to the 19 that Spin Master released in 2014. So, if you're a fan of a specific driver that may be on a smaller team, Lionel is probably going to be your best shot of getting it. Also, Lionel is probably the best diecast dealer if you are impatient. If you're not willing to wait for a store to get stock of a certain wave or a certain car that you want, Lionel is probably the best at getting exactly what you want when you want it. Now let's compare the packaging between Lionel and Spin Master. Now, when we talk NASCAR diecast, there are a lot of collectors that like to keep their stuff in the box. And I would definitely say, if that's you, Lionel is probably the best option for you. A, because the space issue, much smaller than the Spin Master NASCAR Authentics in the box, but these packages are resealable, so you can take them out and put them back in at your leisure. But in just about every other way, I prefer the Spin Master NASCAR Authentics, and let me tell you why. Not only do they look better on the shelves, I mean, just look at the stark contrast in presentation between this Lionel of Kyle Larson and the NASCAR Authentics of Kyle Larson. Which one do you think looks better on the shelf? In addition, if space is an issue, NASCAR Authentics includes a collector's box. So if you really need the Lionel size space, you've got it. The only problem with the NASCAR Authentics packaging is A, it's a little bit big, and B, once you've got the car out of the box, you can't put it back in, unless it's going to look really bad. So let's take a look at Spin Master and Lionel molds. When buying Lionel NASCAR Diecast, there are 3 molds you need to be aware of. On the far left is the WLS mold. That mold is pretty much universally panned by collectors for being inaccurate and fairly poor quality. We'll get into that later. In the center, the Kyle Larson car is on the PTC mold. Somewhere in between. Sometimes you get a really bad example, sometimes you get a really good example. It's hit or miss. And on the outside, on the far right, is the Chase Elliott car made on the EL mold. Collectors prefer this mold because it has a bit more accuracy in the molding and than the paint jobs. There's not quite as many errors. Now that's a stark contrast to NASCAR Authentics, where you have a quality standard across the board. Every car is made on the same mold, and that goes for Chevy, Toyota, Ford. They all have a standard to which that your diecast, you know exactly what you're going to buy. With Lionel, you don't know exactly what you're getting until the pre-orders have been set and the first pictures come out of which mold the car is on. So that's kind of a frustration for collecting Lionel diecasts. So the first comparison is we're going to take a look at the molding that Spin Master chooses to use for their Chevrolet car versus what Lionel does for their Chevrolet car. Of course, this is a PTC mold car. This seems to be the mold that Lionel prefers the most, and of course Spin Master has their just regular Chevy mold. There's no difference between them. So let's take a look and see what differences there are. One of the quickest ways to tell a Spin Master and a Lionel apart is the windshield. You can see on the Larson cars each, they have a very different windshield. On the NASCAR Authentics, the Chevrolet logo is not gold, and the font is not italicized. On the Lionel version, you get the gold Chevy logos and the italicized font. You can also tell subtle differences in the way the cars are molded. The Lionel front end, the front grille right here, looks a little bit more boxy, a little bit thinner, and when you look at the NASCAR Authentics version, it's a little more sloped down and a little bit wider. I kind of prefer that look, honestly. It looks more like it does on the track, but this definitely looks more like a NASCAR does when it's sitting in the pits. Another really good way of telling the two brands apart are their wheels and tires. On the PTC mold Lionel, you can see that they got these really kind of, frankly, dopey looking fat Goodyear tires, and the white wheels are very clear and very well painted. Also, they have a black interior. And when you take a look at a Spin Master NASCAR Authentics, it's kind of interesting because they take the Goodyear tire, it seems, and then they paint the inside of the wheel on after they've printed the Goodyear on there, so you get stuff like this. Now, if that bothers you, you're definitely going to want to pick up the Lionel version, but if it doesn't, the Spin Master, I think, looks a little bit better. You also have always white interiors with NASCAR Authentics because I do believe that the base and this part are the same part, unlike they are on Lionel cars where they are multi-part. So probably that's part of the reason why Lionel has a slightly higher price point. Again, we're really just looking at the molding, but you can tell immediately that the decals are quite a bit different on the NASCAR Authentics and the Lionel version. You can see that there's exhaust printing on the Lionel version. That's the one on the left, and there is no exhaust printing that I can see on the Larson NASCAR Authentics. You can also tell that the Lionel is, again, a little bit thinner, and the NASCAR Authentics is a little bit wider. Also, the splitter, or the spoiler there, is just a little bit different. It's a little bit higher on the Lionel, it's a little bit lower on the Spin Master, but it's a little bit more curved here. You've got a curved edge on the Lionel, and you've got a kind of more, sharp is probably the wrong word, but more of a square edge on the Spin Master. And for some people this matters, and for others it doesn't, but Lionel does paint the splitters when they need to. I also noticed there's a little bit more detail on the hood. As you can see, the hood pins are painted on this car versus not being painted on the NASCAR Authentics. So now let's take a look at the Fords. Now we've got definitely a closer comparison this time. We've got an EL mold Ford here for Lionel, and the NASCAR Authentics Ford. Of course, there is no distinction between Fords for NASCAR Authentics, so it's going to be an interesting comparison. This is the Chase Joey Logano, and so let's take a look at the differences between these two cars. So again, we see quite a bit of difference, actually more difference between the Fords than the Chevys were. You can tell that there's a yellow splitter on the Lionel versus no yellow splitter on the Spin Master. Moving further up, I should mention that there is a bit of an error on this car, the Lionel, and this is something that they're kind of got a problem with, is the grill printing is just a little bit off, and that's a little bit annoying. It kind of looks like it's got like a sideways mustache, whereas on the NASCAR Authentics you've got a fairly straight print there. Now, detail-wise, look at that. They've got the hood pins modeled and the hood. When you go over here to the NASCAR Authentics, it's just kind of flat. There is no like detail at all on the hood there. So that's definitely a props to Lionel. Moving further up, of course, you've got the more accurate window banner there with the colored, the blue colored Ford logos, but I can't say it's a very far departure from the NASCAR Authentics. They got the yellow windshield banner correct, they just didn't color the Ford blue. You know, that's hardly a very far departure, but this is more accurate. Is it $2 more accurate? We'll find out at the end. You can also tell a little bit that the roof on the Ford here of the Lionel has much more of a curvature to it. The NASCAR Authentics kind of has a slope. It goes straight down. I have to say I prefer the way Lionel has molded the top of the Ford body here. I feel it's more accurate than the NASCAR Authentics. So let's take a look at the Ford from the side, and boy oh boy, you guys know that I love the Fords in NASCAR. I think they look absolutely fantastic. And I have to say, I have to give Lionel the credit on this one. They did the Ford exceptionally well. It looks just like it does in real life. And I have to say that again, you can just see it's really the roof that's the problem here that I have with the NASCAR Authentics mold. Look at, I just think the curvature is just right on the Lionel version, and it's just wrong on the Spin Master version. You've also got this black detailing here that's not really prevalent on the Lionel. Now, this is considered an Eliminator 8. Eliminator 8. Easy for me to say. An Eliminator 8 car. This is just a generic chase car. So maybe there's a bit of a distinction because of there was a slightly different livery run in the Eliminator 8 version of the chase, or maybe not. But there also is a little bit of a difference on the back here. Again, the slope of the car is just kind of, it's just kind of got a wedge shape. And this really doesn't, so the bumper kind of hangs a little bit lower than on the Spin Master. And again, we come to the back, and it's a stark contrast. A much bigger spoiler on the rear of the Ford, and a much lower bumper on the Lionel. Another thing that's very interesting is, check out the Pennzoil logo on the Joey Logano. This is the same way on the deck lid, but there's a bit of a space between the O and the IL. It's very strange, but I'm not sure which one's more accurate because I didn't really pay all that much attention to the Joey Logano chase cars, or the Joey Logano car in the chase this year. But Was there really this much variance between the two? Let me know in the comments which one is more accurate to the car that actually ran. But it's an interesting comparison, and I definitely have to say that that I'm much preferring the Lionel version of the Ford mold. Oh, and for all of you that were complaining that there was no yellow splitter on the Joey Logano chase car, not entirely accurate. The bottom of the splitter is printed. It's just not the top like the Lionel. So the Lionel's just a little more accurate there. So here's where things get very, very close and too hard to call, in my opinion. You've got on the left the PTC mold, Peak Antifreeze Clint Bowyer from 2014, and on the right you've got the NASCAR Authentics Toyota Peak Clint Bowyer. They look incredibly similar, and the detailing is very, very close on these. So let's take a look in closer detail. So both Toyota Camry molds are about the same width. There is some difference, some variance on the bumpers. As you can see, the Lionel version has this kind of honeycomb silver printing there, and not so much on the NASCAR Authentics, though you can see a little bit of it there. Also, there's a little bit of a variance in the logo here. It says antifreeze and motor oil, and this just says antifreeze. Not sure which one is more accurate or whether it was just a variance of what ran. But this is where it comes down to it. I mean, this is NASCAR Authentic and Lionel, completely the same in terms of the banner artwork. You know, there's no variance, of course, because the Toyota logo is a white outline with black. So NASCAR Authentics is 100% accurate here. But you can even tell on the Toyota, there's just a little bit more of a slope on these roofs than there are on the Lionel. I'm not really sure why that is. It just must be the artist or the sculptor, whoever creates the mold, has a different interpretation of how to make a NASCAR diecast. So let's take a look at these cars from the side. So once again, we've got the NASCAR, we've got the Lionel version, where you've got a very clear distinction between the painting on the inside of the wheel and on the outside of the tire. Not much else to really go over on the side of the car because the molds are actually remarkably similar. But you can see a little bit better of a job here on the printing of the inside of the wheel for the NASCAR Authentic. But you still have a little bit of the silver coming over onto the Goodyear there. But it's interesting. It's very actually a close comparison, despite the fact that you've got a little bit of variance in terms of the logos here. Again, it's antifreeze and motor oil versus just motor oil. I would imagine it was because this Peak car probably got out before this Peak car, and this Peak car was slightly less accurate. So let's take a look at the back. So again, very, very similar, though I should say that the NASCAR Authentic, again, is much wider, definitely on the back of the Toyota versus the Lionel. Also, the number on the top is smaller for the NASCAR Authentics than it is for the Lionel, and it's actually a slightly different color now that I look at it. That's interesting to point out. But actually, pretty similar molding here. The brake lights are a little bit different. The NASCAR Authentics is a little bit smaller, while the Lionel is a little bit bigger. So let's take a look at the Nationwide Series offerings from Lionel and Spin Master. This was something that Spin Master introduced last year, and a lot of people were excited about it, but it also came with some mixed reviews. So it's interesting to take a look at kind of the lower series offerings between the two, and you can already see quite a bit of difference between the two molds. I was actually pretty shocked about how different they were when you took a look at the other molds, between the differences between those. So again, you can see this car suffers from the Spin Master roof slope, but they both interestingly have a really large splitter. The only reason this one looks smaller is because it's kind of disguised, but I can assure you, looking at them side by side, the splitters are almost the same size. They're just absolutely massive. The difference is, of course, that this one is painted bright red, and that makes it very obvious how big it is. It's interesting also to note that the Nationwide banner on the Lionel seems to come way across the roof here. It's kind of weird because it kind of slopes off the end there. That's kind of different. Also, That's probably the correct font, and that's not so much of the correct font. Not really sure why they put it in the italicized font, but who knows. Taking a look at both sides of these cars, you can definitely see the different approach both Lionel and Spin Master took to producing the cars. You've got a much more stocky, big, for lack of a better term, a toy in the Spin Master, and you've got a much more detailed, perhaps accurate is the right word, Lionel car. The printing is pretty much good for both of them. There's a little bit of a variance in the Lionel, but it's so subtle that you probably can't tell. Interesting to note here that both cars kind of have this little extension here on the side of the car where it just kind of slopes down. That's interesting. I thought that was just a Spin Master thing that they did, but apparently that's accurate. So props to Spin Master and props to Lionel for both molding that, unless it's a mistake on both, in which case I'm not really sure how to praise that or not praise it. Spoiler accuracy always seems to be a big point of contention for NASCAR Diecast fans, and I definitely have to say that the Lionel version appears to be more accurate, but you can also tell that the Spin Master version, it seems like the bumper goes much higher than the Lionel version, and then it just kind of slopes and it kind of gives it that ginormous look that maybe isn't quite as accurate. But you can see they actually modeled the onboard camera here on the back, which they didn't do on the Lionel. But I have to say, overall, the Lionel printing is just a little bit more clear of what it's trying to accomplish. It's trying to show off that it's a Mustang, and I'm not really sure the NASCAR Authentics does the best job of that. And now we get to this car. Now, Lionel fans will probably understand what I'm about to say, and you know what I'm about to say. But for you NASCAR Authentics fans who don't really buy Lionel Diecast, and I was uninformed, I have to say right off the bat, I was uninformed when I bought this NASCAR Salutes Jimmy Johnson. I was expecting to buy this car to illustrate the point of what you're paying $2-3 more for a Lionel car versus a Spin Master car. What I discovered was perhaps that's not always the case, and this is kind of what I'm going to bring the review to the point of. But this really disappointed me, and this is my big gripe with Lionel. It's the quality standards. I know you hear that all the time, but it's not so much about the inaccuracy or the decals falling off the wheels, or just like loose-looking wheels, kind of cheap-looking wheels. It's the fact that if you buy a Jimmy Johnson, a Dale Jr., and a Kyle Larson, they're all going to be different-looking cars. They don't look the same. And one of NASCAR's biggest things is the fact that they all look the same. Chevys, Fords look different, but the Chevys and Fords don't look different between them. And you have stuff like a car where the decals are falling off of it and the wheels are loose, and then you put that up next against the Chase Elliott car, which looks absolutely fantastic and darn near flawless. That's a frustrating buying experience, especially when you're paying $2 more for diecast. Now, I understand there's a bit of a when you're looking for NASCAR Authentics, there's a frustration. Believe me, I've seen the messages that I get on Instagram, Twitter, and here on YouTube. People asking, where's the wave, blah, 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 blah. But you know what you're buying when you're buying NASCAR Authentics, and you don't know what you're buying when you're buying Lionel. So here is my conclusion. NASCAR Diecast collecting requires patience. If you're impatient and you pre-order Lionel cars and then you get it on the WLS or PTC mold, you're likely to be disappointed. If you're looking for NASCAR Authentics, you're also going to need to be patient. You're not going to be able to get all the drivers you want right away, and you're not going to be able to find the cars in the stores right away. But NASCAR Diecast collecting can be rewarding. You just have to be patient. NASCAR Authentics will end up releasing all their cars when they get around to it. Just like Lionel will release high quality diecasts when they get around to it. If you're patient and you wait for the pre-orders to come in and the pictures of the product to come in, buying Lionel diecast can be a fun experience. But if you're uninformed and you don't know what you're buying, it can probably be a pretty frustrating experience, especially if your favorite driver's car ends up on the PTC mold and the decals are falling off of it. Equally as frustrating is when you go into a store and you see the same cars for NASCAR Authentics from 2012 and there's no good online place to buy the cars and have some sort of immediate reward for what you want. That being said, if I'm going to choose, I'm not going to choose a specific company to buy from, because each company has their own merits and their own things they do well and their own things that they do badly. I will say this, if you're the patient type, Spin Master NASCAR Authentics is very, very fun if you're patient. If you're impatient and you just want the diecast right now as soon as that possibly can come out, pre-order Lionel cars and have them shipped to your house. It will be a lot less stress over time. Now, if you're a big fan of Joey Logano and you want the best, most perfect example of his chase car, the best thing that you can do is go to your local diecast dealer or go to your local race and pick out the very perfect example of the Joey Logano chase car from Lionel. Because Lionel, while they have so many errors and so many problems, when you get down to it, the Lionel car will almost always be just a little bit higher quality when you've got the perfect example. Of course, that means when you've got the perfect example. If you just want to go into the store and get a Joey Logano car and make sure it's decent quality, the paint's not falling off of it, and the car rolls fine, you're definitely going to want to pick up the NASCAR Authentics. So it's definitely, it depends what your goals as a collector are. If your goals are immediacy, pick Lionel. If your goals are quality, pick Spin Master. And when you can, and the best case scenario, of course, is getting the best quality cars from both companies. And that's kind of been the goal of this video. Please, in the comments, let me know what you thought of this video. Let me know what side of NASCAR Diecast do you buy? Do you buy both? Do you buy NASCAR Authentics? Do you buy Lionel? Which do you prefer? And do you agree with some of the opinions that I expressed in this video? As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like and please subscribe for more NASCAR Diecast content coming soon. Thank you so much for watching. See ya.